Chicago Bulls Central is the heartbeat of Bulls Nation. It's where you can find passion, facts, and where the frustration all collide in one. And on today's episode, we're talking about a number of those things. First, we're talking a little bit about the defense and how Zach Collins' pending return and Isaac Okoro getting back healthy could help the Chicago Bulls become a better defensive team and shift things a little bit. We're also going to talk about why it's time for the Bulls to admit that they need to play Noah Essengue, and we're going to talk about Buzelis and the sophomore slump. We're going to get to all that and more right after this. What's going on, Bulls fans? Welcome to another episode of Chicago Bulls Central, your number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related. I'm the host there, Haize, but more importantly, you guys can follow the channel at Bulls Central Pod on every social media platform we happen to be on. With that said, let's go to get into this content today, y'all. And yeah, man, the Chicago Bulls defense we talked a lot about. It's going to be something that's talked a lot about is the struggles, right? But how can the Bulls fix them? And I think that's the next kind of comment on the situation is how can the Bulls fix it. Now, I've talked a little bit about how the Bulls need to get back and discover being connected as a team. Early in the season, when we were a better defensive team, we were doing so through, playing connected, communicating on the defensive side of the ball. But also, teams were shooting really bad percentages from three. That has now come back around, right? So the question at that point in time was, are the Bulls just playing such good defense at the three-point line and closing out? Or is it the other team just having off shooting nights? And, the truth was always that it's probably a bit of both, right? And so, Isaac Okoro and Zach Collins are going to be two very important players to this Bulls defensive scheme, right? And with Isaac Okoro not being healthy over the last couple of games, he actually got hurt in that game against the Jazz, taking a charge. He hasn't been, the same since there. And you add Zach Collins to this team that gives you a point of attack defender and a better rim protector than what we have on the roster right now. Now, in no way are those two guys gonna fix the Bulls defense alone. I mean, you're getting probably the best defensive season from Kevin Huerter we've ever seen of his NBA career. We already know what Ayo Dosunmu can be as an on-ball defender and a two-way player. And Trey Jones has shown himself to be a pretty damn solid defender as well. Winning an ACC Defensive Player of the Year award in college, it shouldn't be too surprising there. So the Bulls have defensive-minded players on this roster, right? They have players that can play defense. But I think those two guys are going to be really key and important. And I think they were important to how Billy Donovan envisioned the team when it was fully together. For everybody asking, rightfully so, is Isaac Okoro the right person to be starting here for the Bulls, or is he going to eventually lose that starting position? I always said, I think Billy Donovan is going to give it 10, 15 games of seeing him and Coby White out there together once Coby's back up to full strength, and we haven't seen that yet. But I do think that's going to be something that we end up looking at, right? When it comes down to it. Zach Collins' defense, though, right? The effort that Zach Collins gives on both sides is really good. The Bulls gave up, 10 points less per 100 possessions when Zach Collins was on the court last year. Now, I'm not expecting that to maybe hold true. If it does, great, right? But Zach Collins' defense, especially at that big man position and just being tougher of a player near the rim, really helped the Bulls finish 15-5 last season over the last 20 games. I think this year as well, we're seeing Jalen Smith also kind of retouch in with like him being active around the rim. He's still not a great on-ball defender, but he is a lot more active around the rim. And I do think with Billy Donovan and now, hearing that he's going to be open to playing double big lineups once Zach Collins comes back this season, that's really good, right? But Zach Collins was inside the 98th percentile as far as, points given up in the paint when he was in there for the Chicago Bulls, specifically that run, not on the whole season. So I do think that Zach Collins is going to change some things here. And I think he's, and the combination of that, the double big lineups, he didn't get to play much with Ayo Dosunmu, so having that as a point of attack and Isaac Okoro, that's going to help tons there. But the Bulls are going to have to do more than just in that. They're going to have to get back into being physical. This team started off the season, and it was like they came out of training camp like, yeah, we're physical. We're going to be physical. That was what we talked about in training camp. And then, like I said, once they faced some adversity and that 5-game losing streak happened, I don't know if they ever really rediscovered that physicality that we saw from them at one time before. So they're going to have to really try to get, rediscover that. And I don't want to get into the point of just being like, oh my God, this team could just bound together. We're going to be a great defensive team. I just want this team to be right now. We're 25th in the league, I think, via defensive rating. I don't want to be that low. If the Bulls' offense is going to be really good, which we've seen signs of that, you need to hover around, I think, between 12 and 15. If you can hover around that with the way that the Bulls play pace and stuff like that, that puts you in a pretty good spot defensively. I think, as a matter of fact, I think they ended the season I think they ended the top 6 defense. But that's what you have to do. And Zach Collins, his physicality alone will deter players from getting to the rim a little bit, right? And I think that's what you really want to. And Io's kind of quote here, right? We had a quote from Io in which he talked about how they're being coached, because a lot of people have, rightfully so, asked questions about how the Bulls are being coached. And Io said this: coaching is telling us 1,000 times to box out. And on film, we're going to the glass, not boxing out, standing around. Coach is telling us to get into the ball. Coach is telling us that we have to play physical. We're doing it sometimes in the game, but we're not doing it full game. He's being completely honest with us. If we don't do this, we're going to get these results. I don't know why we keep choosing the same results and keep the stove hot, keep touching the stove. We got to do a better job as a unit. And so, that's Io basically saying, hey, coaches are telling us the right things to do. Coaches are telling us to go out there and close out. Coaches are telling us to go out there and be physical. Coaches are going out there and drawing up a scheme. We are not executing it. Now, some people are going to rightfully so ask, is this Io, covering the ass of his coach or whatever else? But I've said this multiple times. As much legitimate issues as there are with Billy Donovan. And I want to be clear. I understand the legitimate problems that people have with Billy. Hell, I've been here ranting about it before many times myself, right? But I guarantee, when I say things like, oh, I guarantee you Billy Donovan is not telling them to go out there and shoot a off-balance 3 with 21 seconds left in the shot clock. I guarantee you Billy Donovan is not telling them to go out there and not give effort to fight over that screen, right? I'm not saying that Billy Donovan is the best X's and O's coach out there, but I'm telling you right now, as much as people can hate Billy Donovan, again, rightfully so, I guarantee you he's not telling them to make those type of mistakes. The things that come down to the effort on defensively, that comes down to the players. Now, we could talk about having the right personnel out there at times. That comes down to the coach. We could talk about not adjusting to a team, running a simple pick and roll, or you're not, going back to your hybrid zone or whatever it is. Those type of things are on coaches. But when you talk about players that aren't closing out, players that are falling asleep on the defensive side of the ball, players that aren't fighting over screens, players that aren't getting into the body of the player that they're defending to, those type of things comes down to player execution. And so it's a combination of both those things going on here. And the Bulls are going to have to rediscover that if they really want to fix this defensive slide. That is something. The offense, I think, is there. And I've talked about it before with the Bulls and the pace that they play. The defense feeds into the offense because you're playing that pace to get out there in transition. That's why you want to rebound harder. That's why you do want to force turnovers. It's to get into your offense easier. And so, the Bulls buying in better defensively, you will be surprised at how much that's going to make the game easier on them on the offensive side of the ball, and then we'll see that efficiency go up too. So I really want to see this team, coming out of this extended holiday break and getting ready to take battle again tomorrow on the court. I want them to rediscover just the effort part. Focus on the effort part. That's the one thing that you can control. Give complete effort, and you'll be surprised at how much better of a defensive team you can be just by everybody buying in and giving that effort. And let's hope that the Bulls do that. All right, with that said, let's get into this next topic, which is something that a lot of people are talking about, and that's Modest Buzelis and a possible sophomore slump, right? In year 2 so far, Modest has been up and down, right? There have been clear areas that he's grown in, and we're going to talk about that, and we're going to talk about the places where he struggled as well. But we've seen Billy Donovan coach Modest Buzelis hard. And I've said, Modest has said he wants to be coached hard. He wants to be coached like a defensive player of the year. Like, that is the expectations for him. And most of the times that we see him get benched or get set or Billy Donovan go off on him, it's because of a defensive lapse. Right now, of course, we heard him tell the story about Billy Donovan, where you try to get a shot and things like that. But, I think that when it comes down to Modest, some of these mistakes are just going to be part of growth, right? But I do think some of the things from Modest are also effort, like him getting boxed out too easily, right? Him getting overpowered at times. That's a physicality thing. He did add 10 pounds of muscle in the offseason, but you're going to have to it's more about the technique aspect of things when it comes down to that as well, right? So the second season has been a learning process. And I do think sometimes Bulls fans are the orchestrator of their own pain. Because, listen, I was telling y'all a lot this offseason, do not put a lot on Modest Buzelis to all of a sudden hit some crazy, right? In year 2. I think that, instrumental step, like just a step up, is perfectly fine. But, some people had this expectation that Modest was going to average 18 or something like that this year. I never really thought that. I wanted to see like 16. I think it's fair for Modest Buzelis. Of course, him grow in off-ball things. And some of that he's been going on, right? There's added pressure on him defensively, and there's added expectations on him on that side of the ball as well. Modest has talked about it that, teams are putting their better perimeter defenders on him at times, and he's learning how to adjust to that. Same thing on the defensive side. There's now a different expectation of what you need to do as an on-ball defender in year 2 based off, you adding strength, your size, your length, all those type of things. Now, I would say this, Modest has definitely grown as a weak side defender. His block shots, especially coming from that weak side, have been great, and it's a great recognition of the timing that he's had, especially over the last 10 games or so in regards to those blocks, and we're seeing that. Kevin Huerter was leading us in blocks through the first part of the season. Modest is now doing that, and he should be doing that, right? But this part of his expectations and the pressure that he's getting is just part of his growth, right? Some of it's going to come as the game grows as the game slows down, right? But I do want to say this for Bulls fans that are starting to knock Modest, and I do think it's a kind of a vocal small community. He's taking steps up. He's creating more for himself. The weak side defense that we've talked about has been great. His timing on blocks have been really good. His shooting percentages are really solid as well overall too. He took a bit of a dip after that last game, but this is a player that wants to be great, and therefore by wanting to be great, it means that that comes with a different level of expectation from you. And I feel like Billy is holding Modest accountable to who Modest Buzelis is telling Billy Donovan he wants to become as a player. And I, for one, can never knock Billy Donovan for doing that. I can never knock a coach for holding a player to what they say they want to do. Hell, I say it all the time. When a player says something that they want to do for themselves, I hold them accountable to what they say they want it for themselves. That way I'm not arbitrarily putting my own thing on them, right? But let's just be clear here. Over the last 5 games, Modest is clearly struggling. He's averaging 10 points, 4.8 rebounds, 1.6 assists, 1.6 turnovers as well per game. He's shooting the ball 40% from the field and 28% from 3. He's also a minus 76 over this stretch as well. Now, to compare that to earlier in the season, where he was averaging 15 points per game, almost 6 rebounds, 1.2 assists, 2 turnovers per game, but shooting the ball 48% from the field and 40% from 3 over the first 12 games of the season, right? And he was a +1 in that time period as well. So you're seeing a Modest, not the plus minus is the best stat, but like you're seeing Modest that he has to, it is being a little bit of a slump here for him. His minutes has also gone down from 29 minutes per game to 23.4 over the last 5 games as well. So Billy Donovan is clearly seeing something that he wants Modest to improve on, and thus it's led to less opportunities for Modest Buzelis this season. Now, for what it's worth, he's still averaging 14 points, 5.5 rebounds on 46% shooting overall from the field and 36% shooting from 3. Those are solid enough numbers. The closest numbers are what he did last year, right? But if you're expecting to see some type of leap from Modest, you're just not really seeing that this year. He is averaging 1.5 points more, per game than what he was as a starter last year, and so that's good, right? But I think when it comes down to this is that, that we're seeing that Billy Donovan still has a pretty short leash when it comes to Modest Buzelis. And the problem then becomes about, is that the right thing to do with Modest, or do you need to let him go through his ups and downs and ebbs and flows, and we'll see, right? We'll see what happens there. But I think overall, Modest is not playing up to, he'd probably be the first one to tell you he's not playing up to how he sees himself and how he wants to perform. And that's something that I think, it's gone down with the team. I think that overall you could tell that there's something with the vibe of this team that's a little bit off as well lately. But you got to get back to it. And Modest can be one of the spark that helps stoke that flame and get us back to where we want to be. And, Modest is going to have to perform better to get there. I think he can. I think he will. And we'll just see how it goes for Modest Buzelis. But all right. Coming out of that one, I do want to talk about Noah Essengue. And I think we have to have a serious conversation. Not that it's going to matter because Billy Donovan isn't going to see this podcast, nor is Arturas Carnesova, right? But through 2 G League games, Noah Essengue is averaging 25 points, 7 rebounds, 1.5 steals. 1 steal and 1.5 assists per game in 30 minutes per game. He has consistently stood out in the G League. Now, he was up here for a little while where he didn't play as many G League games. And that was because he was sitting on the end of the bench, and that's fine, right? But I do think in a time period where the Bulls were missing so many players, the fact that we could not get to see Noah Essengue more than 2 minutes. It's just really, it's stupid, right? To me, it's really stupid. And I think he's shown himself an ability to be ready for more than that. Now, I always said that Noah Essengue, the thing that was in his control is he has to go, when he goes down to the G League, he has to play and perform in a way that shows that he's above that level of competition. And I think that he's done that, right? You look at a game like New Orleans, for example, where the Bulls were out-rebounded 55-33. Noah Essengue played 2 minutes in that game, right? What could have the size have done? Now, I would say this, Noah did look very passive in that game as well, but what do you expect for a rookie to get their first NBA minutes? And we didn't, we played him 2 minutes, and we haven't used him much. Now, I can get it that he's slight of frame, 7'1", wingspan, 6'10" without shoes, 204 pounds at the draft combine. I think he's now up to about 212. I think he's added some muscle. That's really good. I think what we're seeing now is that Modest is showing that he's ready for NBA minutes. But because of who Billy Donovan is and how he deals with rookies, he's just not giving Noah Essengue that opportunity yet. And, I hope that comes at some point. Like, at some point, I don't want to see Noah Essengue Adama Sanogo. And what I mean by that is Adama, even though he was an undrafted free agent that we signed, dominated the G League, right? Like, he averaged, it was something like 18, 12, and 2 blocks, and never really got to see. The one game that we did get to see him, he put up a 20-20 game in the NBA level, and then Billy Donovan just didn't use him. Now, it's a much different thing when you're taking a lottery pick that we know that AK is very high on, but I don't want to see a rookie season wasted completely down in the G League when it looks like Noah Essengue could be ready for some minutes. Now, I have been the one that say I do think getting 30 minutes down in the G League is better for your progression than getting 5 inconsistent minutes at the NBA level. That's not what I'm talking about. I think that Noah Essengue has shown himself to be ready for about 10 to 12 minutes per game at the NBA level. Like, at least allow him. While you're having players that are injured, why not try it and then see what happens here? And that's where one of the things with Billy Donovan's coaching, and I know I said it, and this is me fighting against my own realization of reality, right? Is that once Billy Donovan saw what worked with Modest, that's going to probably be the blueprint of how we deal with rookies. So you're probably not seeing Noah Essengue get a really actual opportunity at the NBA level, maybe until after January. And I don't think that that's the right decision personally, but I do think that that's probably what Billy Donovan's going to do. And then even then after January, you're probably going to see that 8 minutes or something like that. But Noah Essengue continues to dazzle down in the G League, and I want to see that eventually rewarded with something and give the young man an opportunity to show what he can bring at the NBA level. The worst that can happen is, okay, you're not ready. You still need that year season. We'll send you back down in the G League, but don't put him out there for 2 minutes and have him standing in the corner and not really doing much. And, some of that's on Noah for sure too, but just don't have him doing that. And, we'll see if Billy Donovan wakes up a little bit, seeing the performance of the young guy. Yes, one of the youngest players in the NBA, second youngest only to Cooper Flagg. But Noah Essengue looks like he may be ready for some NBA minutes. And I think that that's something that we have to look at as well, and get him ready for that, because Noah is, if you can start seeing if at some point this season you see something that, all right, this is what we're going to use Noah for next year, it informs how you're going to go about your offseason. And so we'll see that, right? But speaking of offseason, last topic of the day before we get out of here on Thanksgiving, K.C. Johnson had his episode of the Fast Break, and he mentioned teams getting aggressive in the trade market, and even the Bulls. Casey made sure to mention that this was complete speculation. This is not reporting. This is not saying anything. But he did say that the Bulls could look to be aggressive if the Bulls' struggles continue down the stretch of the season, and especially defensively. And he more so mentioned, could the Bulls move a Coby White, right? Due to the Timberwolves. The Timberwolves are already signaled that they are being aggressive out there on the market as they're looking for point guard help for Anthony Edwards. So you mentioned that right now Dante DiVincenzo starting at point guard, and could the Wolves come calling, for Coby White, and what would have to happen for the Bulls to feign interest in that? And here's what I'll say to that, right? I look at this and saying, I've always said I think the Bulls want to keep Coby White. That's my personal opinion, but is there an offer out there that could be possible to where the Bulls can't turn down? And I think that that's true for everyone. Hell, look, players were traded, right? Unless you're a top 5 player in the league, and even then we saw Luka traded, right? So I think overall I'll say this. To piggyback off what K.C. Johnson said, if the Bulls continue to struggle, would that make AK more or less likely to make a big splash and a big move? And I say yes and no, right? Because I do think hearing AK's talk about at the beginning of the season, evaluating for long-term fit, I think that that's the thing that always gives me the thing that, okay, he could very well be looking at this to say, hey, listen, we feel like for whatever reason somebody's not going to be, whether you don't want to be here, whether we feel like we can, rather than paying you, we can get something back more valuable. You have to play that card and see it. Now, when you hear things like Trae Young, John Morant, LaMelo Ball are all available out on the trade market potentially, even though their teams turned that down. Teams that are looking for a point guard could pivot to Coby White. Now, Coby's playing shooting guard for us. I think he's going to be perfectly fine in that role, but teams could come calling for Coby White. The question then becomes about it, and I'm going to pose this one to you guys. We'll piggyback off this one, maybe in the mailbag, so I want to hear from you guys very loudly on this one and how you feel about it. But what would it have to take? And I get it. For anybody who says, I don't want to move Coby, I get it. That is not this question. Do not respond to this question with saying, I don't want to move Coby. That defeats the purpose of the question. Because even if you don't want to move Coby, I think I want to hear the answer on what would it take to pry you, right? So what would it take? What level of offer would you have to hear from to move Coby White? I want to hear from you guys on that one. What would you want back? Is it 2 firsts? Is it a young promising player? Is it 1 first? Is it anything just so we don't have to pay? Whatever it is, what would you have to hear back that the Bulls are getting back in a deal if they decide to trade Coby White at this trade down? Again, I don't think that is likely at all, but I want to hear from you guys on what you would want back and think that the Bulls should be asking for back for Coby White. Let me know what you guys think on that down below. But that's our time for today, y'all. I appreciate you guys for tuning in and rocking out with us as always. The questions that we have here: can the Chicago Bulls fix their defense internally, or is it going to take an outside move to be able to fix that defense? Is Modest struggling, or is he just evolving, right? And that's part of the evaluation. And should no Essengue be in the rotation as it stands right now? And then, of course, the last question: what would you want back in a potential Coby White trade? Drop your thoughts down below. Make sure you like and subscribe to the channel as well to double check that if you're subscribed. Make sure you guys are following us at Bulls Central Pod. You send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns, bullscentralpod@gmail.com. And lastly, if you want to leave a text message and our voicemail for the mailbag, the number to do so, 773-270-2799. We are the #1 spot for everything Chicago Bulls related, but that is thanks to you, lovely and beautiful people. And like I like to end every episode on, go Bulls. Love you guys. See red if you can, y'all. Peace.
This has been a presentation of the Break Media.